Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and how it always has been that name. And Brachelle's over there. And Brachelle, how are you today? And we've got a great guest. He's an author. He's a thought leader. He's a leader. He works with businesses. He helps people understand that there is a better way to be and not to feel like they've got to go do everything all the time. But Brachelle, how are you today?
I am good. We've had a really good day. I have to admit it was one of those days I woke up tired and couldn't push myself through, and now I feel fully energized, probably more than I need to for holding still, so I'll have to back off on the coffee, but I'm very excited for today. We have Ryan Gottfredson as our second guest here. He has ryangottfredson.com where you can go and find everything that he's doing and learn about his book, Becoming Better, and all the things. So, welcome, Ryan, and how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And I kind of feel like you. Maybe I started off a little sluggish, but energy has picked up and I'm ready for a great conversation.
Very good.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's the energy that's the energy transfers from you to us and us to you and the audience to you as well, because it's all about energy and it's all about living a better life. And tell us about your story a little bit and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, I think let me just jump into where I did my Ph.D. program. So I did my Ph.D. program in organizational behavior and human resources at Indiana University. And I did my dissertation on leadership. And I learned a lot from that. And I also observed something that I found to be quite interesting. So what I observed was that almost all leadership research focuses on asking and answering one primary question. And that question is, what do I need to do to be effective? And that's led to some really good answers. We know a lot of things that leaders should do, but that question also didn't sit very well with me because I feel like it's a little bit short-sighted. Because what I feel about leadership is that leadership is less about doing certain things and it's more about being a certain type of person, becoming a person that other people want to follow. And so the last essentially 11 years, my focus in my research, my study, my teaching has all been focused on how do we tap into the being side of leadership. And what it's opened up is a world of development that most people aren't familiar with. And it isn't just for leaders, it's for everybody. And so that's what I now focus on is how do we become people that can be a brighter light to the world around us and people that others want to follow and be influenced by.
That's an amazing process that you've been going through, and it is culminated with the book that you just have out that just got published in a very short time ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago as we're recording this. So just came out. It's called Becoming Better, the groundbreaking science of personal transformation.
When we talk about personal transformation, a lot of people are confused by what we mean by personal transformation. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, and I'm there with you. I think we are confused about that. See, here's what I have learned. I think that most people really don't know how to become better. I think most people know how to do better, but I'm not sure most people know how to become better. So here's a framework that I think is helpful to unpack this. I like to think about it as that we have two different sides of ourselves. One side of ourselves is what I call our doing side. Think about like an x-axis. Our doing side is our level of talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities. And I think we know how to improve along our doing side. I mean, you think about our education systems, our athletic programs, and most of our organizational development effort is almost all focused on how do we improve our talent, our knowledge, our skills, and our abilities. And that's not bad. But what I found is that it really is only incrementally helpful in terms of us becoming better. And if we want to become better, we actually have to focus on a different side of ourselves. And it's what I call our being side. Think about the y-axis. And our being side is more about the quality of our character, our mindsets, our psyche, our consciousness, our emotional regulation. In fact, in my book, how I talk about it is the quality and sophistication of our body's internal operating system. So let me give you an example of this, or some examples. So if it's okay, let me give you some, I'm going to say, well-known people, and I want you to tell me what they have in common. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go Bill Clinton, Ellen DeGeneres, Tiger Woods, Michael Jackson. If you're familiar with Bobby Knight, let's maybe go with those examples. What do those individuals have in common?
They're
Rochelle.
all very outspoken
Mm,
and respected,
yeah.
maybe.
And some a little bit more than
In some ways,
others, but
yeah, in some ways.
but we don't need to go there. But they
They
all
had a huge
have
influence.
Yeah.
they
Sorry,
all have
Kevin,
had by virtue of the fact that when you say those names, everybody knows those names because they have contributed or they've done something to make us either feel better or to make us laugh or to be president or to be a great basketball coach who threw chairs at people and stuff like that. So I'm talking about Bobby Knight, of course.
Yep.
So can you give us your definition of those people?
Yeah, so let's recognize something. These are incredibly well-known people who have been incredibly successful within their spheres of in which they've operated. I mean, I said Michael Jackson. We got the king of pop, for goodness sake, right? So
Yep.
these are incredibly talented people. They're really far out here on their doing side. But something they also share in common is they all have some controversy surrounding them. And the controversy that surrounds them has less to do with their doing side and has almost everything to do with their being side. And so you take somebody like Bobby Knight, who has won 3 NCAA national championships, but is probably more well known, to your point, Kevin, because he threw a chair across a basketball court, because he struggled with his emotional regulation abilities. And that's all about the being side. And if I could, so Indiana University is my alma mater, and I just wish I could go back in time, sit down with Bobby Knight and help him understand, look, you are brilliant on the doing side, but I want to help you with that being side. And if I could help you there, I think you're going to be an even more successful coach, a greater positive influence, and a greater light in the world. And I just didn't get that opportunity.
Yeah, that's okay.
Go ahead, Rochelle.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how we kind of are all like that. There's many people in our life that, if you are around somebody and they say a name, we know who that person is. And a lot of times you're looking outward and not inward. And um, do you ever do any practices? I don't know why this came into my mind, but do you ever do any practices with people where you try to almost have them mirror themselves or have conversations with someone else to try to get a different perspective to have the constructive criticism, but also be able to do it in a positive way, I guess, and maybe see some things they may not see in themselves?
Well, here's what I love about the question, because I do that in different exercises and maybe in different ways other than
Right.
mirroring, but having that same effect. Because here's what I'm sensing is, Rochelle, you've recognized that there is a capacity that we can develop where we develop the capacity to step outside of ourselves and almost view ourselves from a third person perspective, right? I've
Exactly.
also oftentimes heard it called viewing ourselves as being on stage or viewing ourselves as being the audience, or we're the actor versus the audience, right? And this is a capacity that one needs to develop if they want to elevate in their being side. It's in other words, or another way, more simple way of saying this, in order for us to elevate along our being side, the first step is always self-awareness. And so we've got to develop different practices, different techniques, different tools, and that's one of them to help us to step outside of ourselves and investigate how we are programmed to operate. I mean, you even gave this example. It wasn't exactly in the same way that you mentioned it. But let me ask you guys, how would you say most people respond to constructive criticism? They get what? Defensive, right? Well, why do they get defensive? It's because their body, their being side is programmed to interpret constructive criticism as an attack. And if I interpret it, and if that's the way my body makes meaning of constructive criticism, then naturally I'm going to get defensive. And that makes sense at some level, but at the same time, it's a reaction that holds us back from becoming better. And so the people who have a more sophisticated, more upgraded being side or internal operating system, they have this capacity to receive the constructive criticism and create the space to wonder and investigate, is there something here that I could benefit from? So they don't immediately get reactive, they get intentionally responsive. And that's, I think, a valuable way for us to consider, what is my altitude along my being side? How easy is it for me to get triggered and become reactive? Or am I somebody who could be kind of present, calm, cool, collected? That's going to say something about our being side. So, Rochelle, I guess I kind of took your question and went in a somewhat different direction. But do you want to add anything to that based upon how you asked your question?
No, I think that was beautiful. If anything, I think about how it kind of helps frame how our personality is. One thing that I learned too, it was things were either one way or the other. It was black or white. I need to be really calm, cool, collected, this or that, or I'm just going to be off the rails all the time, and everybody can just say Rochelle is crazy. Um, I will admit to you that I'm still trying to find the balance of those two things because I think it can be hard to try to be like, well, I want to keep my personality, I want to keep my energy, and I want to keep this, but I want it to be this way. And it doesn't mean you have to shut that off. It's almost like your higher energy and your lowest energy kind of meet you in the middle. So would you say that's being present?
Well, I think it's suggesting that you're stepping in the right direction, right? So this journey of elevating along our being side is, we're never going to be done with it. There's always room to elevate, right? But here's what I think you'll find this fascinating. There's been research done coming from the field of adult development psychology that has investigated what is the kind of the different altitudes that people operate at along their being side. And what they've found is that there's actually 3 different adult development stages or levels that represent our being side. And when they've done research across kind of a broad population, what they've found is that 64% of adults operate at the base level. Most adults have never really developed along their being side in adulthood. 35% get to the second level, and only 1% gets to that top level. And so to your point is, the reality is that most people are unaware about their being side. They're unaware that they can improve in their being side, and they're unaware of these different levels. But if we can become aware of these things, then it makes it easier to start taking the steps that it sounds like you've started to take in your life, right? And me as well. Like, I'm not done. I'm not perfect. But these are the steps, you're kind of describing what it feels like to be on this journey, right? We're sensing I'm not where I was before, and I'm recognizing I do need to improve in this area. I'm just not yet there. And if we could help people clarify some of these things, it helps us speed up our journey and development.
Yeah. Yeah. Some things are very slow and some things are like all week. I'm like, I kind of just need a day to process those last 7 days.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm in the midst of it, and I'm totally okay with admitting that. And I have my faults and I have my learning, and I'm just enjoying all of it. That's all I can do.
Yeah, and the fact that you can admit that, right, is huge. Most people are not willing to admit it, right? Because, and here's what's cool about this. I want you to think about this continuum from being self-protective to being value creating, right? Most people are wired for self-protection, right? They don't want to be vulnerable because it helps them feel safe and secure in the short term.
Yeah.
But if we can upgrade our wiring, be more tolerant of the negative emotions in the short term of being vulnerable, that opens up the door for our growth, development, improvement. So, Brichelle, you're setting this great example where you're willing to step away from self-protection, admit, right, I'm not yet who I want to be, and the person I want to be, me neither. And that level of vulnerability creates the space now for value creation for yourself as well as for us, right? I'm going to say this, all right? We're not yet done with our conversation. We got a ways to go. But I'm going to say that because of your willingness to be vulnerable, our conversation is going to take a completely different trajectory because of that. So, one, thank you. But then also now I'm curious, where's our conversation going to go?
Well, when we return from this break, I've got a little story I want to tell you guys that I think is instructive, and I want you to tell me if I did a good thing or a not so good thing. So we'll be right back. We need to play this, and we'll be right back in 45 seconds. Don't go anywhere.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and before this moment, the ever-present Brichelle, and somehow in the modern technology world, something has happened, and she'll be back when she's able to. But Ryan, I wanted to talk to you about this because you're talking about being vulnerable and being honest and being really helpful to people. When I was in the restaurant business, I was the general manager, and I had this thing: I'm the general manager, I'm the boss. And on any given Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night, we'd have 13 servers, 6 or 7 cooks, 3 or 4 dishwashers, a couple of bartenders, and 3 cocktail waitresses. Brichelle will be back in just a second. She's just restarting her computer, and so every Friday and Saturday night, I would walk around as the boss. Remember, I had all these people and assistant managers who worked for me. And I would wander around and I would do this. I would walk into where the wait staff was getting ready and they were doing the pre-work that they were doing. And then say, hey, we're going to be busy. Everybody get ready. We're going to be busy. This is going to be great fun. We're going to have a great time, and we're going to be busy. As a matter of fact, they actually, when I left that particular job, they put it on a plaque for me that says, quote unquote, we're going to be busy, because that became a catchphrase for me because I wanted everybody to relax and to be excited about what we were about to experience and to have a great time doing it. Was that the right thing to do?
It surely wasn't the wrong thing to do, right? I think there's a lot of really positive things that I think can come with that, right? You're, in a way, I think one of the benefits is you're getting them in a mindset that's allowing them to anticipate, some of the struggles and difficulties that might come, and to have a good attitude along the way, right? So I think that there's a lot of good things, and I think one of the things that, if we were to say, if I was to nudge you in a different direction, it might be to be, where's our focus, right? We're going to be busy. Is it right? Is it on us, or is it on the customers we're serving? And if anything, I would want to nudge you a little bit more towards the customers there.
Well, and what the premise of that was, we're going to be busy because we're going to have a lot of customers, and it's going to be vital that we take care of every customer, and everybody needs. I used to have another expression that I would say, diving for tables. And that meant that the busboys make sure they clean the tables really good. The waiters and are making sure that they're on top of it, and that they're with a smile and they're offering great service, and the cooks are developing all that. So there was a method to the madness, but your point is well taken, and it's really interesting when you start looking at the dynamics of being a leader and working with people, how you can, and I learned this as a bus driver too. You can, because of the energy that you bring to any particular thing and the attitude that you bring, you can change everything about the experience other people are having within that framework. And a lot of it has to do with being who you really are, and being better and than you used to be. And I love when you said, yeah, we are trying, or we are working to be better every day at who we really are. That's a major point, isn't it?
It is. Well, let me do this. You rattled off some characteristics earlier, right? You said vulnerability, if I remember, honesty. Like, give me some other characteristics that come to mind of like really great people. What are some other characteristics?
Integrity.
Right?
Integrity, and doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Being on time is another one for me.
Yep.
But and really having a great attitude about everything that you're doing in life, rather than to take the attitude of woe is me, I hope that everything turns out well, that it's going to turn out well, and it's going to be whatever happens, it's going to be what it's going to be. And it's not going to be what we're going to do, it's going to be what we're going to be. And
Exactly.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, let me add in just a few more characteristics that come to my mind. We got humility, authenticity, patience, right? All of these characteristics of greatness are being side characteristics. They are not doing side characteristics. We don't develop these characteristics of integrity, humility, honesty, responsibility. We don't develop that by gaining new knowledge and new skills.
Right.
How we develop those characteristics is by upgrading and refining our body's nervous system. So let me give you some terminology that might be helpful. And this terminology is fairly new. It's only about 12 years old, and it's still not well known. But when we improve along our doing side, gain new knowledge, talent, skills, and abilities, that's what is called horizontal development. When we improve along our being side, we upgrade our internal operating system. That is what is called vertical development. And so what I've learned is that 99% of efforts to improve ourselves generally are about horizontal development, because that's how we're trained. I mean, you think about our education systems. Yep. It's all about, if I take an accounting class, that's because I want to download accounting apps so that I could do accounting things. But just because I add the accounting app onto my iPad, it doesn't mean that I'm any better as an iPad. If I want to upgrade who I am, I need to upgrade my internal operating system. And so the reason why I bring this up is what I hope that we're doing with this conversation is I hope we're opening a new strategy for how people can develop themselves. That rather than focus on this horizontal development and on our doing side, we focus on vertical development and our being side. And what I've learned is that if we could step into this door, this new strategy, it's not just incrementally helpful, it's actually transformational.
That is so true. But I got to tell you, when people say, well, I have to be honest, That I'm not quite so sure that I can be honest with everybody because it doesn't serve me. Kind of, you know what I mean. Or I have to have integrity all the time. That seems so tiring that I have to have integrity. I can't be a butthead occasionally. And how do you combat that? How do you make people realize that what you're talking about is the best way to be?
Right. So even if you look at your answers that you just kind of gave, or these responses that people will give, is their responses are, you can tell that there's some wire. This is coming from a place of self-protection as opposed to a place of value creation. And it's a signal of their being side altitude. And so that's where, like a framework, as I mentioned, if we got 3 different levels along our being side, allows us to say, look, because of the way that you're thinking about this, it's kind of putting you in this stage, this level. And that's not the only way to think about this. In fact, there's more sophisticated ways of thinking about this. In fact, I would say integrity isn't about telling the truth 100% of the time. Integrity is about navigating the social circumstances in a manner that best creates value for the people in that dynamic. And sometimes that means withholding information. But other times we need to be very transparent. And so what I've learned, another way of saying this, is as people develop on their being side, they actually become more complex beings. And they're more willing to, they have a greater ability to take off and put on different hats. So as we elevate along our being side, we develop more hats in our closet, and we develop a greater capacity to take off and put on different hats, which allows us to better navigate the various environments that we're in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does to me, Rochelle.
Yes,
Welcome
makes
back, by the way.
100%. Thank you. My computer decided that it wasn't going to work anymore for a minute, but I am back, and I was listening and on Facebook. And um, what are the biggest things that you see that are setbacks for people, that are the hardest for them to push through when they're trying to change something and they just tell you it's just not working?
Yeah, well, so I'm going to answer this at 2 different levels. So let me start
Okay.
surface, and then I'm going to take it deeper. And there's a really deep, meaningful connection there when we take it deeper. But one of the things, so let me start surface. So when we think about these 3 levels along our being side, at the base level, our body is wired to fulfill the needs of safety, comfort, and belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're wired to do the things that help us to feel safe, comfortable, and belong. Well, guess what? Elevating along our being side requires us to be unsafe, uncomfortable, and not belong. So we're wired in a way to not vertically develop. So that's always going to be a hurdle. But let me take this to a deeper level. One of the things, and this is where I'm currently doing a lot of research, and this is where a meaningful takeaway comes from. One of the things that I'm learning is that the more trauma one experiences in their life, the more their body becomes wired for self-protection. So one of the things that we're learning is that, and trauma isn't the only factor that impacts our being side altitude, but trauma is a primary factor that impacts the degree to which our body is wired for self-protection versus value creation. So it shouldn't surprise us to kind of think the more trauma one experiences, the more they become wired to protect themselves from future trauma. And so here's why this is so meaningful when we recognize this, is at the end of the day, elevating along our being side, vertically developing, at its core is about healing our minds, our bodies, and our hearts. And to me, that's maybe one of the most beautiful and meaningful messages that we could have, at least in the field of personal and leadership development, is at the end of the day, if we want to become a brighter light in the world around us, if we want to become a greater positive influence, it starts with healing ourselves.
Very good. And Kevin, I'm going to let you take us into this break, but when we come back, I have a question following, like, more of an idea of not necessarily people running from themselves, but maybe just I am struggling with the concept right now of you make everything what it is, right? So I can think about something in the past and I can decide, well, that makes me feel this way or this or that, and I need to work on that and it's affecting me here. Or there's that other side of me that's just like, no, it doesn't need to have that meaning. What happened happened. I'm gonna let that go. It's a part of the past. It doesn't need to affect now. Struggling with those two things has been something I cannot come to terms with or understand, and I want to learn so that I can help other people because everybody around me is kind of living in that state right now. So, Kevin, go ahead and take us into this break, and then we'll follow up with that question when we come back.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be happy to do that, ma'am. And and also, before we get done with this episode, I would love for Ryan to talk about how kindness plays into our beingness and our vertical climb to excellence, which is what we are all. Well, what we could, if we chose to, all be in search of. I got to pick the right words to make that work. So we'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk Radio, everybody. We've got Kevin McDonald here, of course, and myself. We are talking with Ryan Gottfredson about a lot of things, actually. So if you haven't watched this in the last 30 minutes, go back and try to watch that. If not, stay with us because we're talking about some really good things and we're going really fast. So to follow up with my question, Ryan, do you remember what it was, or do you need me to go over it?
Well, I'd love for you to restate it, and I'll have some follow-up questions, but happy to dive into it because what I was recognizing from your question is it's coming from a deep and meaningful place. So let's, if you don't mind re-asking your question, that'd be great.
Of course. So with this moving forward, I first saw it as I was either running head on to myself or I was running away. And then I realized that kind of all tied into how I was dealing with the past. And the future is not something I'm really worried about anymore because I am creating that. But it's the past things. And we have so many guests come on here that give two different perspectives of your past doesn't have to have that meaning. You can let it go. It doesn't have to be what it is. And you don't need to continuously bring it up and go through it. But also there's that side of it that sits with me at night and drives me insane. That's like, but this hurt you. And this is affecting you in these ways. And without going back to that place, I maybe won't be able to move forward. So just your idea on that and what you would say.
Well, so this, I sense this question is coming out essentially from our conversation as it related, as I brought up the role that trauma plays in our being side, right? And here's a statistic that I find interesting. At least 70% of adults have experienced trauma to the degree that it makes them wired more for self-protection. So almost all of us have been hurt or harmed in some way. By others or by certain circumstances. And in another way of saying that, all of us have need of healing, right? And so I think at the core, part of your question is how do we heal so that our past stops disrupting us in the present? So that we could bring our fullest and best self forward. And it's surely not easy, and there's not one right path for everybody. But at a fundamental core, healing from trauma is about reprocessing what has occurred and actually working with our body to loosen our grip on kind of what has occurred. You know, the more tightly we hold on to it, the harder it is for us to rise above it. And so there's different processes and therapies and things like that, modalities that are out there. Let me point to a couple of resources, if it's okay, that might be helpful to people who feel that way. So let me point you to a couple of books. Or I'll actually give you 3 books. So one is a book that's called The Choice. It's written by Edith Eger. And she is a Holocaust survivor. And she has one of the most incredible stories. And later in her life, she was kind of a protege of Viktor Frankl. And later in her life, she became a therapist. And she talks about this exact question. How do we rise above the way that she says it, the prison of our past? So it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. Another book is a book called What Happened to You. It's written by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. I think if you're going to read your first book related to trauma, that's the first book to read. But if you want the deepest book as it relates to trauma, I'll point you to a book called The Body Keeps the Score, written by Bessel van der Kolk. And at the end of that book, Bessel van der Kolk walks through a variety of options for treatment modalities to help with what you just described. And I'll just say from my own personal experience, I've worked with a trauma therapist, and one of the therapy modalities that we utilize is one that's called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And it's a specific therapy that is designed to help us step back into our past trauma without becoming re-traumatized and reprocess it in a healthier way. And I would say, just for myself, engaging in that therapy modality has probably done more for helping me elevate along my being side than almost anything else. But surely it's not the only way to do that. So those are a variety of directions I think we can point people towards. Would you like to add anything to that, Rochelle?
No, just thank you so much for sharing that. You kind of did bring it into full circle when you had said that moving through those traumas and getting to a point to where it no longer affects you, because a lot of times I think people are just like, well, I'm just going to forget about all that. It's just, I'm not going to let it affect me, and I'm not going to think about it, and it's just doesn't matter anymore because it's gone, rather than to accept what happened in a healthy mind space, accept who you were at that time, and not blame yourself either, because a lot of times we find ways to blame ourselves to help us heal through it. Don't take that blame, give yourself a little bit of grace, and then one day it comes up and it's like, hey, that doesn't feel so heavy anymore, and that doesn't affect me, and it's not something that you have to shove down. It's something that has actually worked its way through and taught you what it needed to so that it could go away. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, let me just add one thing. As somebody who's tried to do that work myself, I've been surprised. And here's what I've been surprised about. I'm going to phrase it this way. Pulling up the rug, I anticipated it would be really hard, really difficult, and really painful. I'm not going to say it wasn't hard, difficult, or painful, but what I will say, it was much easier and much less painful than I anticipated. And so I think a lot of times we hold ourselves back from doing some of that deep-seated work because of the fear of potential pain that might come about from it. And I would just say, and I think it's more than just me, and the people would say, it's not as difficult or as painful as we anticipate that it will be. Right. And so hopefully that's helpful.
Do you think that is because in reality, what we're holding on to the thorn bush and we're afraid to let go because we might grab on to the next one? Because a lot of times I've heard people say that.
It surely could be part of that. And I'm thinking back to Edith Eger's book. And one of the ways that she articulates it is she had this belief that if she started to let the rage come out, she wouldn't be able to control the rage. So that was her fear. And so that it took her decades to get to the point where she even attempted to allow the rage to come out. And she said once that rage came out, she was surprised how, one, it was so weightlifting, and two, she found that I could control it. It wasn't as uncontrollable as I thought it would be. And so that's just, that's why I speak of her as being such a powerful example.
Ryan, I'm curious to know what role, if any, forgiveness plays in getting past the trauma and healing from it and moving forward through it.
Man, well, I'm going to say, give you a caveat. I'm no expert on forgiveness. But what I would say is that
self-awareness is key.
Forgiveness is surely part of the healing process. And forgiveness does not mean, in my mind, forgetting. But what are the things that, I don't know, maybe I'll take this in a direction that hopefully people will find helpful, which is what I find in the work that I do with leaders and people is that the primary person that these leaders and people need to forgive is not others, it's themselves. And it's their lack of forgiveness of themselves that holds them back from being the people that they can become. And so I'm going to just phrase it this way. Rather than say you need to forgive yourself, the way that I like to talk about it is you need to change and improve your relationship with yourself. And I think if we do that, naturally forgiveness is a part of that journey, but it changed the focuses away from what has happened and puts the focus on where we're headed. I don't know. So there's some 2 cents. I don't know if you want to add.
Oh, no, that's a hell of a lot more than 2 cents, by the way. That's really an astute observation, because when we talk about forgiveness and people say, what he did or she did, I'll never, ever forgive them. But what ends up happening, and at least I think, is that you end up, if you don't reconcile it and get past it and learn how to forgive yourself, you won't reach where you want to go, because it's going to keep repeating itself. If you forgive yourself and forgive what happened, that it was not your fault and whatever it was, and then you can get through it so that you can get to the other things that you want to get to, because that's a really kind of a fundamental thing, I would guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll give some other book recommendations. Many of your listeners are probably familiar with Brene Brown, but I think she does a great job of talking through this changing our relationship with ourselves. And in fact, I had a coaching call yesterday with a business leader. He's an entrepreneur that his business, he had to go through bankruptcy. He lost his business, and now he's a leader within an organization. And he is somebody that is having a difficult time forgiving himself for losing his business. Right? There's some external circumstances that surely impacted that, and there's surely some things that he could have done better. But now he's left kind of grappling with, how can I believe in myself given the failure that I've had in my past? And the reality is that for him to become the leader he needs to become, he's got to change his relationship with this. And I think he's doing some things well, and I think we put him in the direction of some other things. But it's not just relationships with people, right? It's our relationship with ourselves. And that example just sticks out in my mind, partly because it was yesterday, but because it's along the lines of what we're talking about.
Isn't it also a change of perspective? That because if you're going to continually blame yourself for what happened and you're not going to forgive yourself, you need to change that perspective to somehow to be like, in his case, he lost his business. So what? I've declared bankruptcy. I've had a bad country music song period. It's like, but that doesn't affect me, because that's in the past. I can't do anything about that, nor should I, and stuff. So.
Well, you're spot on. I mean, that's what we talked about is really what we're describing here is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. When we have a fixed mindset, we take failure and we say, that means that I'm a failure. But when we have a growth mindset, when we fail, we're like, We don't see it as we're a failure. This is a stepping stone to get me closer to where I'm going to go. And I'm going to learn a lot from this failure. In fact, I'm probably going to learn more from my failures than any of my successes. And so if we can develop that more of that growth mindset, and that's what this gentleman needs to work on, develop more of a growth mindset, we can navigate our future more effectively, for sure.
And it's a lot more fun than always beating yourself up over crap that you had no control over. Or even if you did, maybe you were too young or you had a substance abuse that you are now working to fix, and whatever the issues are. And there are many. By the way, we're talking with Ryan.
Gottfredson.
Thank you. And his website is
RyanGottfredson.com, and it is Ryan with a Y, and his last name is Gottfredson. Go look that up. There's so much learning to be done here, and when we come back from this break, Ryan, I just want you to touch a little bit deeper on relationship with yourself. We kind of started talking about that somehow in the last show, and I want to know how you really help people open up the idea to that, because I think it can be a little bit frightening and you're like, what? That's weird. What do you mean? And I've experienced it. So stay with us, everybody, and we'll be right back.
Right. Yes, indeed. And don't forget, Ryan's got a book out, Becoming Better.
Yeah.
If you want to become better for yourself, don't do it for anybody else. It's an internal thing. It's you being better for you. And we'll be right back, as Rochelle so astutely said. Are you looking for a powerful way to grow your brand while making a real difference? Well, Positive Talk is the perfect platform to align your message with inspiration, hope, and meaningful conversations. By sponsoring Positive Talk, your brand will reach an engaged audience that values positivity and connection. People who want to support companies that share their values. Take this opportunity to showcase your business in a space that uplifts, inspires, and creates lasting impact. Don't wait. Email me, Kevin@kmmedia.pro today to learn how you can partner with us and spread positivity while growing your brand. And welcome back to Positive Talk. Rochelle is here, and my name is Kevin McDonald, and Ryan
Gottfredson
is here. and can we talk about your book a little bit more, because it intrigues me, and I think it can be very helpful for folks. They can pick it up anywhere, right? Amazon and all that. And it's brand new. It's hot, right? Hot off the presses. And so what motivated you to sit down? You seem like a very energetic young man. What motivated you to sit down and put all your thoughts and stuff on paper and then go through the editing process and then doing all that to publish the book? What was your motivation?
Well, it was fueled by my coming to understand exactly what we're talking about. But as I'm coming to understand these concepts related to doing side and being side, and that there's this different developmental strategy that's out there, and just most people aren't familiar with it. So the reason why I wrote this is to help people become aware of a better developmental strategy, right? So if you got two choices between, if I'm going to work on developing myself and I could work on my doing side and I could work on my being side, most people are working on their doing side, but the return on their investment isn't as great as if they could work on their being side. So I wanted to open up that strategy for others. And so in the book, there's really three parts to the book. We introduce these concepts of doing side and being side, and the whole book is about our being side. What is it? How do we evaluate our altitude along our being side? And then how do we elevate along our being side to become transformationally better?
And you say this absolutely correctly, because Neil Donald Walsh and many others have come up with the concept of the be, do, have scenario. Are you familiar with that?
I am, yes. Yep. It's a good one. Sometimes misused, but yes.
Can you describe it in your own words? Because what most of us do is absolutely 180 degrees wrong, because what we do is we do stuff, and we're going to do this. And if I do this, and I'm going to have this, and I'm going to make this, and then I'm going to get this, and then I'm going to be happy because I've got all these things that I've done in my life. And that's exactly backwards, at least from my perspective. What's your perspective, young man?
Yeah. So I want us to think about this in terms of like layers, right? So let's even think about an iceberg, right? So the tip of the iceberg, what people can see, this is kind of what in my mind, what we have. And that's what people can see. Well, what drives what we have? Well, most immediately beneath the surface, that's our doing. Our behaviors will dictate the things that we have. But what drives our behaviors? What drives our doing? Foundationally, that's our being. So in my mind, our being drives our doing, and our doing drives our having. Where I think many people misstep as it relates to this is they primarily say, if I want to have more, I've got to do better. And that might help a little bit. But here's the problem. If we try to do better, but our being stays the same, our doing really doesn't amount to much. Ultimately, the best way to get what we want and have certain things that we want, our aspirations, we've got to start by looking at the foundation. So the deeper we dig in terms of these layers, I think the more that we move things at the deepest levels, the greater the impact on the higher levels, the things that we have. Does that make sense?
Well said, young man. Rochelle.
Yes, I have to make sure that I want to get just your insight, like your overall view of if you were to tell somebody what's your relationship with yourself, and they said, what does that even mean? How would you kind of just bring up the idea to pay attention to it? When I did this, I could not tell you, Ryan, how uncomfortable I was. I would be starting to, because I'm an only child, and it makes you really weird because you have to find anything and everything to try to keep yourself distracted. But after going through a really long relationship and having people in my life nonstop that I was involved with and taking care of, and then I walked away from that, there was just Rochelle. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And I think it was that would have been a huge question for me that probably would have been easier for me to grasp is what's your relationship with yourself? Because I was so uncomfortable with myself. Everything I would do, I would start to sing in my room, and then like that made me weird. Like it felt like somebody was watching me. I judged myself, or dancing around, or just starting to learn myself again was uncomfortable. So any advice that you'd have to give off of that for somebody who's like, yeah, what is my relationship with myself, and how do I help it?
Yeah, well, what a big question. And kudos for you for doing this work that you've been doing. And so I think that there's not one right way. I think everybody's a little bit different. So let me throw out a variety of ideas that just might be helpful. So like all of these ideas are going to involve certain level of introspection, right? That we're going to dive into and think about ourselves in different ways. And one way to think about this is, what is your comfortability of sitting with yourself, right? Do you have the need to be distracted all the time? Or can you sit with yourself, right? So that's one way. We could then bring up another topic would be our ability to be mindful and present. What is our capacity to do that? Brene Brown talks a lot about in her writing, her willingness to be still. And she said for most of her adult life, she struggled to be still. And that says something about her relationship with herself. I think another thing to think about is what is our metacognitive abilities? We talked about this a little bit earlier. What's our capacity to step outside of ourselves and investigate ourselves and our motives and our scripts, our habits and our tendencies? And that's essentially, I think, a really just good definition of self-awareness from Stephen R. Covey. Another way to investigate this, and we also touched on this a little bit, it was what is my level of reactivity? How easy is it for me to become triggered? Another way that this is termed is what is the width of my window of tolerance? right? Which is this: how easy is it for me to be triggered? So all of these different topics or different lenses are things that we could use to investigate our quality of our relationship with ourselves. And I would say, I think that these are like good starter level steps. Surely there's some deeper ones, and we've even talked about some of the really deep ones, which is, engaging in some therapy, for example, or different therapy modalities. And those are even deeper. But I think that those are maybe a smattering of good surface level steps that we could take with ourselves or even with others that we want to help support. Would you add to anything to that, or any other ideas come to mind for you?
No, that was absolutely beautiful. And I know we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to turn the time over to Kevin if he has a final question, because I want you to be able to share a message with our listeners before we end.
Well, first of all, this has been great fun for me, and it's wonderful just to listen to your perspective on stuff, because it really is right on. And I need to get the book, and I'm glad you wrote it, because it's going to have a meaningful impact on a lot of people going forward. And for those of you just turning in, what the hell am I talking about? I'm talking about the book Becoming Better. and Ryan wrote the book, and it's just been out a couple of weeks, and I'm sure that it's doing well. He doesn't possibly have any idea how it's doing yet, because it's only been out a couple of weeks. But have you gotten any reviews?
I have. So the feedback that I'm getting it's humbling to get such positive feedback, which is good. And, I think last I checked, I wish I had more, but I think last I checked, I had 30 5-star reviews on Amazon, 30 out of 30. So I know that this is resonating with people. And I think the biggest compliment that I'm getting from people as they're reading this is, I'm sharing this with everybody that I'm talking to, right? So that's exactly what you want to try to create when you write books, is you want to try to create word of mouth. And I'm getting the sense that it's creating that buzz. So, and I appreciate you allowing me to be on here to share this message and share the book with others. So thank you.
Well, the book is resonating with people because people are hungry for this kind of information, and they don't get it from a lot of places, or maybe a better way to put it is they don't know where to look. So it's better for them now. You can go to Ryan's website, and you can get the book Becoming Better, and that will help you professionally and personally, your relationship with your family and your children. And we all say that we strive. I want to be better. I want to be so much good and do some good stuff, but we don't know how. And we need someone to give us the tools. Thank you for giving us the tools.
Yeah, I hope it's helpful. That's truly, what I want it to be, is I want it to have a positive effect in the lives of others, and to keep in the theme that we've been talking about most recently, is at the end of the day, help people to heal and improve their relationship with themselves so that they could be more of the person that they want to be.
And that's the highest. That's all you can ask for. And that's the highest thing. We didn't talk about kindness. We've got 1 minute. Tell me about kindness. Does that play into any of this at all?
It does. But here's the thing that I'm going to invite people to think about. What is your motive for kindness? Right? So I think that almost all people are kind, but where does the motive for that kindness come from? Does it come from because we want to be more safe and comfortable for ourselves? Does it come from the fact that we want to figure out a way to get ahead? Or does it come from a place where we want to be a positive light in the lives of others?
That one.
Yeah. So I think everybody has the capacity for kindness, but I'll invite us to inspect our motive for our kindness. And because I think our motive matters just as much as our behaviors, if not more. So hopefully it just gets us to question and elevate the motive for our kindness.
Well said. You must have gone to school or something. He's got, for those of you who don't know, he's got a Ph.D. And Rochelle, we've been talking to Ryan
Gottfredson. Go visit his website, RyanGottfredson.com. He has the power. Oh, sorry, my bad. The book, Be Better. And thank you so much for your time, Ryan. I've got to ask you, will you come back in a few months?
I love it. If you got space for me, then I'll be there. So thank you.
Oh, we've got space, young man. We create our own. So thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Brachelle. Have a great day, everybody, and remember. Oh, I say this in the end, so I'll wait for that. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.